Okay, as you can see, it's lessons 5 through 8, and we'll begin at the end of chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart. And just to bring everyone's consciousness to this particular time and space that we are in at Namasharanya, I have a review text wherein Shonika Rishi, in the middle of chapter 3, he first described Maharaj Pariksit. You may remember how he was the grandson of the Pandavas. He played with the dolls and deities of Krishna at a young age, so he was naturally a devotee. And then he says this in text 16. Sukadev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, was also full in transcendental knowledge and was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, son of Vasudeva. So there must have been discussion of Lord Krishna, who was glorified by great philosophers and in the company of great devotees. So Shaunaka Rishi, at this point in the text, is introducing or questioning from Sutta Goswami. He's inspiring, please continue speaking. There must have been some talks about Lord Krishna because both of these people were devotees. And now, beginning in the text 19, he'll begin describing those people who do not spend time in Krishna Katha. We often hear how human beings who do not take to Krishna consciousness are polished animals. They're really no better than animals because human life is meant for God realization. So this is the theme that we're picking up now with Shaunaka Rishi, talking about those people who do not listen to Krishna Katha or follow the Lord. And I'll read the first one, Sama. Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter 3, text 19. Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. Purport. The general mass of people, unless they are trained systematically for a higher standard of life and spiritual value, are no better than animals. And in this verse, they have particularly been put into the level of dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. Modern university education practically prepares one to acquire a doggish mentality with which to accept the service of a greater master. After finishing a so-called education, so-called educated persons move like dogs from door to door with applications for some service. And mostly they are driven away, informed of no vacancy. As dogs are negligible animals and serve the master faithfully for bits of bread, a man serves his master faithfully without sufficient rewards. I can't hear you.
Okay, now, so there's a lot to cover in this lesson, and these verses that we're reading now, this verse and the coming up verses are vital in understanding Krishna consciousness. The Prabhupada spent so much time lecturing on these verses. So, Pati, unless you want to continue, we'll have Vaishnavi read and then Narayan.
Go ahead, Vaishnavi.
Okay. Persons who have no discrimination in the matter of foodstuff and who eat all sorts of rubbish are compared to hogs. It is known to everyone that one man's food is another man's poison. Human beings are expected to accept the remnants of food offered to Lord Sri Krishna, and the Lord accepts foodstuff from the categories of leaves, flowers, fruits, etc. Bhagavad Gita 9:26. As prescribed by Vedic scriptures, no animal food is offered to the Lord. Therefore, a human being is meant to eat a particular type of food. He should not imitate the animals to derive so called vitamin values. Therefore, a person who has no discrimination in regard to eating is compared to a hog. The camel is a kind of animal that takes pleasure in eating thorns. A person who wants to enjoy a family life or the worldly life of so called enjoyment is compared to the camel. Materialistic life is full of thorns, and so one should live only by the prescribed method of Vedic regulations just to make the best use of a bad bargain. Life in the material world is maintained by sucking one's own blood. The central point of attraction for material enjoyment is sex life. To enjoy sex life is to suck one's own blood, and there is not much more to be explained in this connection. The camel also sucks its own blood while chewing the thorny twigs.
Karna, Narayan, and then Karna after Narayan.
Okay. The ass is an animal who is celebrated as the greatest fool, even amongst the animals. The ass works very hard and carries bundles of the maximum weight without making profit for itself. The ass is generally engaged by the washerman, whose social position is not very respectable. And this special qualification of the ass is that it is very much accustomed to being kicked by the opposite sex. When the ass begs for sexual intercourse, he is kicked by the fair by the fair sex, yet he still follows the female for such sexual pleasure. A hen-pecked man is compared, therefore, to the ass. So Srimad Bhagavatam categorization of the common man without any spiritual enlightenment into the society of dogs, hogs, camels, and asses is not at all an exaggeration. The leaders of such ignorant masses of people may feel very proud of being adored by such a number of dogs and hogs, but that is very flattering,
Not very flattering.
not very flattering. The Bhagavatam openly declares that although a person may be a great leader of such dogs and hogs, distinguished as men, if he has no taste for being enlightened in the science of Krishna, such a leader is also an animal and nothing more. He may be designated as a powerful, strong animal or a big animal, but in the estimation of Srimad Bhagavatam, he is never given a place in a category of men on account of his atheistic temperament. Or, in other words, such godless leaders of dogs and hog like men are bigger animals with the qualities of animals in greater proportion.
So we're seeing here that how relevant the Bhagavatam is. This is written, spoken by Vyasadeva 5,000 years ago, more than 5,000 years ago, or around that. And everything that is being said in the Bhagavatam and in Prabhupada's purports are relevant in the world today. People might think that we're old fashioned and old school. This is the eternal school. So this section is very relevant. Karna, can you read, darling? And then Ian.
Unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Got you.
Okay. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. Purport, Srila Prabhupada. In the impure state of a living being, the various senses are fully engaged in mundane affairs. If the ear is not engaged in the service of the Lord by hearing about him from Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, certainly the holes of the ear will be filled with some rubbish. Therefore, the messages of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam should be preached all over the world very loudly. The human tongue is especially given for chanting the Vedic hymns and not for croaking like frogs. The word asati used in this verse is also significant. Asati means a woman who has become a prostitute. A prostitute has no reputation for good womanly qualities. Similarly, the tongue, which is given to the human being for chanting the Vedic hymns, will be considered a prostitute when engaged in chanting some mundane nonsense.
You're muted.
Ian, please read, and then Madhurya Leela. Hati, did you want to comment on this verse?
No, I want, at the end of all these verses, we'll have a discussion.
Okay. Ian, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. If you can hear
Okay,
me now.
make yourself louder.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay,
Am I
as
good?
loud
Okay.
as, there you go, as loud as possible.
Yeah. The upper portion of the body, though crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden, if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands, as though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man, if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead, Hari. Who put their shield upon fire? Lord is the Lord of everyone, including great kings and emperors, and men who are rich in the estimation of mundane people, must therefore make it a point to visit the temple of Lord Shri Krishna and regularly bow down before the deity. The Lord in the temple is the worshipable form. In the worshipable form is never to be considered to be made of stone or wood. For the Lord in his actual incarnation as the deity in the temple shows immense favor to the fallen souls by his auspicious presence. The common man who is puffed up with his material position and does not bow down before the deity of the Lord in the temple, who defies temple worship without any knowledge of the science, must know that his so-called turban or crown will only succeed in further drowning him in the water of the ocean of material existence. Maharaj Prataparudra, the greatly powerful king of Orissa, was always very busy with heavy state responsibilities, yet he made it a point to sweep the temple of Lord Jagannath at Puri once a year during the festival of the Lord. The idea is that however important a man one may be, he must accept the supremacy of the Supreme Lord.
Thank you. Madhurya Leela, could you read, and then Isap? And please make it so that we can actually hear you. Ian, maybe you want to check your mic because it was a little, wasn't real clear. This is our only way to communicate with each other. So thank you, Madhurya Leela.
The eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality Godhead Vishnu, his forms, name, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of the peacock. And the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks. Prabhupada's purport. Especially for the householder devotees, the path of deity worship is strongly recommended. As far as possible, every householder, by the direction of the spiritual master, must install the deity of Vishnu, forms like Radha, Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, or Sita Ram especially, or any other form of the Lord like Nrsimha, Varaha, Gauranitai, Matsya, Kurma, Shalagam Shila, and many other forms of Vishnu. Like Trivikrama, Keshava, Achyuta, Vasudev, Narayan, and Damodar are recommended in the Vaishnava Tantras, Vaishnava Tantras, and one's family should worship strictly following the directions and regulations of Archana Vidhi. If one is unable to maintain a temple at home, he should go to another's temple where all the above performances are regularly executed. Visiting the temple of a devotee and looking at the profusely decorated forms of the Lord, well dressed in a well-decorated, sanctified temple, naturally infuse the mundane mind with spiritual inspiration.
Thank you, Madhurya Leela. And it's interesting that you read that verse because Madhurya Leela has a very elaborate, wonderful puja in her home. This deity worship is a way of life. So I think she sets a very wonderful example, because a lot of people are not near temples and can't always attend the temple programs for one reason or another. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue in our worship and very seriously practice this archana, which is recommended here. Isaac, could you read, and then Dundakesh?
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Just to,
Yes.
I'll be happy to.
just to reiterate, the points that are being brought out here
Mhm.
are how people who are not engaged in these different features of Krishna consciousness are being
Mhm.
compared to animals
Mhm.
in these various texts.
Go on, Isaac.
SB 2.3.23. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the tulasi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. Purport. The first condition of devotional service to the Lord is therefore to be a servant of a pure devotee. And this condition is fulfilled by the statement, quote, reception of the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee who has also served another pure devotee, unquote. That is the way of pure disciplic succession or devotional parampara. Lord Chaitanya designated himself as Gopi Bhatu Pada Kamalaya Dasanudasa, or, quote, the most obedient servant of the servants of the Lord, who maintains the Gopi damsels at Vrindavana, unquote. A pure devotee therefore never approaches the Lord directly, but tries to please the Lord, the servant of the Lord's servants, and thus the Lord becomes pleased. In Vrindavana, all the pure devotees pray for the mercy of Srimati Radharani, the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna. Srimati Radharani is a tender-hearted feminine counterpart of the Supreme Whole, resembling the perfectional stage of the worldly feminine nature. Therefore, the mercy of Radharani is available very readily to the sincere devotees, and once she recommends such a devotee to Lord Krishna, the Lord at once accepts the devotee's admittance into his association. The conclusion is therefore that one should be more serious about seeking the mercy of the devotee than that of the Lord directly. And by one's doing so, quote, bracket, by the will of the devotee, close bracket, the natural attraction for the service of the Lord will be revived.
Hati, can I ask a question of the group?
Sure.
Now? Do you see in this verse, there's a reference to the dust of the lotus feet of a devotee. For Nityananda's appearance day, my husband and I gave a little talk to some young people, the youth here in Alachua, and we talked about the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotee. Can anybody tell me what that dust is? What is the essence of that dust? Is a reference to it in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I just wondered if anybody can tell me, what is that dust? What do you think that dust is? Akadasi, you got something? Or anybody?
Would it be like offering service to them?
Very good. That's one. There's one other, but that's definitely the major one. And there's another major one that comes from that.
Mercy
Mercy
of
is
the pure devotee.
Yeah, and how is that displayed? How is the mercy of the pure devotee displayed? For example, Srila Prabhupada is not physically present here. How is his mercy displayed?
By him engaging us in devotional service.
Through Vani,
Fine.
through the Vani, through the instructions. So these two things, service and instructions, are the dust of the lotus feet.
Do you have
of the
that
pure
quote?
devotee. I don't have the quote. It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I don't have it now.
Maybe you can
but-
look it up while we're somebody else is reading and share that.
Okay.
Next person.
That's going to be Dandakesh and then Tisha after Dandakesh.
2:3:24. Certainly, that heart is still framed, which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes, and the hairs stand on hand. Purport. It is expected by all means that by discharging regulated devotional service, one must manifest the change of heart. If there is no such change, the heart must be considered still framed, for it is not melted even when there is chanting of the holy name of the Lord. We must always remember that hearing and chanting are the basic principles of discharging devotional duties, and if they are properly performed, there will follow the reactional ecstasy with signs of tears in the eyes and standing of the hairs on the body. These are natural consequences and are the preliminary symptoms of the bhava stage, which occurs before one reaches the perfectional stage of prema, love of God.
Jai, thank you. But you want to read?
I'm reading.
Okay.
Thank you. O Sutta Goswami, your words are pleasing to our minds. Please, therefore, explain this to us as it was spoken by the great devotee Sukadeva Goswami, who is very expert in transcendental knowledge, and who spoke to Maharaj Parikshit upon being asked. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Knowledge explained by the previous Acharya like Sukadeva Goswami and followed by the next like Sutta Goswami is always powerful transcendental knowledge, and it is therefore penetrating and useful to all submissive students. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart.
Jai, thank you.
Hatsi, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just note how the thread has now concluded a particular weave, and Shonaka is requesting Sutta Goswami to continue narrating the conversation between Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. But within that weave is also the tapestry of philosophy. And we'll find this also in the next chapter called The Process of Creation. So Shonaka Rishi here is trying to enthuse everyone, the sages listening, Sutta Goswami, and anyone reading, how important in human life these topics are. So they're very inspired. And one of the things that was really nice here was it says here, if there is no, it is expected by all means that by discharging regulated devotional service, one must manifest the change of heart. And then there were symptoms of ecstasy which manifest. So these, the more advanced one becomes, then the change in heart manifests by a more eagerness to hear and to engage in various services. So now we'll go on to chapter 4. Swami,
Okay,
you can again choose who's going to read.
okay, Manvantara, can you read? And then Ekadasi.
Unmute.
Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Pariksit, the son of Uttara, after hearing the speeches of Sukadev Goswami, which were all about the truth of the self, applied his concentration faithfully upon Lord Krishna. The word satyam is very significant. This means existing and chaste, and both imports are perfectly applicable in the case of Maharaj Pariksit. The whole Vedic adventure is to draw one's attention entirely onto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna without any diversion, as instructed in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 15. To become a pure devotee of Lord Krishna, two things are very much essential, namely having a chance to be born in the family of a devotee and having the blessings of a bona fide spiritual master. By the grace of Lord Krishna, Pariksit Maharaj had both opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Ekadasi, and then Sulakshana.
Maharaj Pariksit, as the result of his wholehearted attraction for Lord Krishna, was able to give up all deep-rooted affection for his personal body, his wife, his children, his palace, his animals like horses and elephants, his treasury house, his friends and relatives, and his undisputed kingdom. Report. To maintain all the household affairs, one has to increase the bank balance and be careful about the treasury house. And in order to display the opulence of material assets, one has to keep good relations with friends and relatives, as well as become very careful about maintaining the status quo. This is called material civilization of material attachment. Devotion for Lord Krishna means negation of all material attachments as detailed above. Maharaj Pariksit, due to his natural affection to Lord Krishna as a devotee of the Lord, was always executing his royal duties on behalf of the Lord. And as a responsible king of the world, he was always careful to see that the influence of Kali would not enter his kingdom. Attachment for household paraphernalia and for Lord Krishna go poorly together. One attachment is the path of darkness, and the other attachment is the path of light. Where there is light, there is no darkness, and where there is darkness, there is no light. But an expert devotee can turn everything to the path of light by an attitude of service to the Lord. And the best example here is the Pandavas.
So we are seeing here, Pati, did you want to say?
Go ahead. Same
I'm
thing.
sorry. I'm fired up. Prabhupada is being very clear and handing us directly the straight sauce. Of course, we want to use everything in Krishna's service, but we have to know that negation of material attachment, that's actually what we're trying to do. We're trying to relieve ourselves of our material attachment and identification. And this is coming from the mouth of the pure devotee, from the Bhagavatam. So if we have difficulties, which we all do, the way to relieve ourselves from the difficulties, not that we don't do our duty, but this attachment that we have in the world is the thing that causes this great difficulty. Am I right?
No doubt. I especially, this jumped off the page at me, the last paragraph. Attachment for household paraphernalia and for Lord Krishna go poorly together. We see in the society of devotees as it's manifesting today in the modern world, that most of them are maintaining families, homes, many of them businesses. So the question arises, how is that Krishna conscious? Or maybe better yet, what is the barometer by which one can determine if they're too enmeshed and entangled in these things with babies, grandbabies, great-grandbabies, cars, business things, money, bank balance, so many different things that naturally conditioned souls become glued to, and that adhesive grows upon us as we interact with them. So the point being brought out here concerning Maharaj Parikshit, who also had much more than any of us as emperor of the world. It says here that due as a result of his wholehearted attraction for Lord Krishna, he was able to give up the deep-rooted affection for, and then fill in the blank. So the point is that when his time came, he was able to immediately, from within his heart, drop it and give everything over to his son and go to the bank of the Ganges to prepare for a death, and immediately became enthused to hear from Sukadev Goswami. So the question arises within everyone's own heart. Are we able to immediately give up this deep-rooted affection for one another in our families, for all the different things that we've worked so hard to accumulate and work with in Krishna consciousness, because they're woven together. But that symptom is that he was able to give up that deep-rooted affection immediately when the time came.
One more thing, to assure that we can give it up, it's a process. We don't wait until the time of death to give these things up. We gradually understand through the philosophy and through the application of Krishna consciousness, through chanting and hearing and associating with devotees, discussing these truths, that gives us the strength to become detached at the we're entitled to this life. We're being given this life. We're very blessed to practice this while we're still in the body, to practice this detachment. It doesn't mean that we don't fulfill our duty, as I said before. It means that our duty is not to be attached to the results of what we do. It's a problem. I'm in the material world. Every one of us is struggling with the same kind of thing. So it's not that we can immediately give it up without having practiced. That is a very rare soul. And it says in the purports that Maharaj Parikshit was blessed that he was born in a family with the two things. Prabhupada said there was two things: born in a family of Vaishnavas and had a spiritual master.
Anybody else have
lotus
some?
feet of spiritual master.
Does anybody else have a comment or
Yeah.
realizations of this?
Yes, Akadasiji.
Yeah, I just wanted to say how important it was also to have, I mean, you already mentioned it, but good association, like someone to tell you, hey, you're too attached to this situation. You need to step back, because sometimes it's not easy, for one to see it for oneself. They need a good friend to kind of jump in and let them know.
Right. Thank you.
Good point.
Oh, and Karna, did you want to say? Unmute, darling.
Yes, I'm unmute.
Oh, yeah,
okay. I just wanted to say that in the end, the last two sentences Prabhupada said, where there is darkness, there's no light. So where there's material attachments, it's dark, and where there's Krishna, it's bright. And he was so definite about it. And as someone was reading it, I was thinking, well, isn't there a middle path where it's sort of dim, not dark, not light? But then he concluded it by saying, the trick is to engage everything you have for Krishna. Whatever you're doing, make sure the end result is to please Krishna.
Wonderful. Bhadra, did you want to say something? Yes, Bhadra, unmute.
We can't hear you.
I think he's trying to unmute.
Bhadra Prabhu, you're still muted.
There he is. Go on, Bhadra. No, we can't hear you.
Okay, let's move on then.
Okay, we're going to move on and work on that. Sulakshana, and then Bhadra.
Okay. SB 2.4.34. O great sages, the great soul Maharaj Parikshit constantly wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna, knowing well of his imminent death, renounced all sorts of fruitive activities, namely acts of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, and thus fixed himself firmly in his natural love for Krishna and asked all these questions exactly as you are asking me. Purport. As a great emperor of the world, Maharaj Parikshit had to observe such regulations of the Vedic Karmakandiya section, but by his slight association with Shukadeva Goswami, he could perfectly understand that Lord Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudev, for whom he had a natural love since his birth, is everything, and thus he fixed his mind firmly upon him, renouncing all modes of Vedic Karmakandiya activities. Srila Madhavendra Puri, the grand spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya, took leave of all Karmakandiya obligations in the following words. Quote, O my evening prayer, all good unto you. O my morning bath, I bid you goodbye. O demigods and forefathers, please excuse me. I am unable to perform any more offerings for your pleasure. Now I have decided to free myself from all reactions to sins simply by remembering anywhere and everywhere the great descendant of Yadu and the great enemy of Kamsa, Lord Krishna. I think that this is sufficient for me. So what is the use of further endeavors? Unquote.
That's beautiful. I feel like cheering when I hear that. I feel like cheering. It's so wonderful. Okay, Bhadra, could you read next, and then you can ask your question. And now we're going to go through everybody again. Vaishnavi, you're next. But Bhadra, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Text 5, translation. Maharaj Parikshit said, O learned Brahmana, you know everything because you are without material contamination. Therefore, whatever you have spoken to me appears perfectly right. Your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, for you are narrating the topics of the Lord. The practical experience of Maharaj Parikshit is disclosed herein, revealing that transcendental topics of the Lord act like injections and received by the sincere devotee from a person who is perfectly uncontaminated by material things. In other words, a reception of the message of Srimad Bhagavatam from
You're not reading what we're reading here, Bhadra.
Okay, I'm sorry. What's happening here? Because
You
I
have to
have
read
here.
it on the screen.
Okay. What is it? Devotional hearing the message of the Lord is not like hearing ordinary topics. Therefore, the action will be felt by the sincere hearer by experience of the gradual disappearance of the ignorance. The crucial taste of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is that one should get positive enlightenment by such
An act.
I cannot read it. Such act. Okay.
What we've done, obviously, during these readings every week is not include the entire texts, but just a summation of the topics, especially this week where we're doing 2 weeks at once. Bhadra, what was your realization that you had about the Yukta Vairagya, using everything in Krishna's service without being attached?
Yeah, it wasn't my question. My point was that because in the Grihastha life, we have a tendency to go from one extreme to another extreme. Either we go for renunciation, or either we go for the collection of more and more material things. So the best way is to balance the life, means continue the spiritual life, and at the same time continue the responsibilities. And as the time goes, then as we become more mature in our devotional service and mature in our life by the age, as we get older, then we know that we have to gradually give up. So it is a gradual process. Otherwise, we have done it, so many has done in our society, go from one extreme to another extreme, and then we see, we know what happens. That was, I was going to make a point.
Thank you very much.
You know, I could just say also that it's an attitude. It's our attitude in devotional service. We have to develop that kind of attitude of renunciation and detachment. Not that we
Sama.
stop doing. Yeah, okay.
No, just note also, I see Anantasesha is there with Vaishnavi, so he can read also.
Oh, okay. Vaishnavi, Anantasesha.
Can I ask you a question on that topic about what Brother Prabhu was talking about? Where and how do you draw the line between giving up and performing your duties? I mean, where's that? Is that a very subtle, difference?
Yes, that is very subtle. It's also very subjective. Srila Prabhupada pointed out in one of the earlier purports that we read, one man's food is another man's poison. And we see that in the Vedic culture, Krishna is completely liberal, just like that example of the Varnashram Dharma. In Varnashram Dharma, there is an acceptance that different people have different natures, and that a person can attain perfection not by trying to be like someone else, but by actually using his own God-given nature in service to the Lord. A Sudra shouldn't try to become a Brahmin. Neither should a Brahmin try to become a king, and so forth. So it's like the foot is best as a foot. It's if we put it on another, if we took it off and sewed it on another part of the body, trying to make it so that it could be like a hand or a head, it would be ridiculous. It wouldn't fit. So it's like a person trying to do something that's not natural for them. So the point that Bhadra was making also was that we're part of if you follow devotional practices as prescribed in the Vedas and refined by the instructions of a spiritual master, then gradually the engagement and the entanglement become less, and the desire to perform service becomes more, so that a person can use anything in service of the Lord without becoming attached to it. We see that Srila Prabhupada's the perfect example of that. He had watches and rings and Rolls Royces and homes and built beautiful buildings around the world, but he was completely unattached to all those things. He would give away the watches, he would give away the rings. It didn't matter if he was driving in a Rolls Royce or a rickshaw. He was always focused on his service to the Lord. So that would be my realizations on that particular topic.
Thank you. That was very clear. Thank you.
There's also a verse in the Bhagavad Gita. I should have looked it up. I think it's the second chapter. One should develop a higher taste. So as we follow the instructions of the spiritual master and engage in spiritual activities, chanting and hearing and offering our food and worshiping, associating, we develop a higher taste, and we start to actually become more and more interested in Krishna. So it's a gradual process, and as you engage, you develop a higher taste. So this renunciation and detachment, sometimes you have to give it a little help, but it naturally comes about also, isn't it?
Thank you.
Okay, so please, can you read now, Prabhu?
Yeah, before the reading, I'm having some vision issues.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Vaishnavi.
Vaishnavi, and then after Vaishnavi, Narayan.
Okay. So Srimad Bhagavatam 2.4.6. I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. Purport. The spiritual master, therefore, must be one who is Sarvajna, as stated herein before in connection with Shukadeva Goswami. Thus, all inquiries on God, which are unknown to the disciple, may be made from the qualified spiritual master. And here, the practical example is set by Maharaj Parikshit. The Lord's supervision in connection with creation is mentioned even in Bhagavad Gita 9:10. And it is clearly stated there that material energy is a manifestation of one of many such energies of the Supreme. Parashas Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate. The research scholar finds out the cause and effect of everything. But research scholars as great as Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and many other demigods are sometimes bewildered by seeing the wonderful creative energy of the Lord. So, what to speak of tiny mundane scholars dealing with petty things?
Very good. Thank you. Karna, could you read, please? And then Ian. Unmute, darling. Unmute.
Sorry.
Start again.
Maharaj Parikshit did not ask his spiritual master, Sukadev Goswami, to narrate Lord Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. He wanted to hear first about the creation of the Lord. Sukadev Goswami did not say that the king should hear about the direct transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The time was very short, and naturally, Sukadev Goswami could have gone directly to the 10th canto to make a shortcut of the whole thing, as generally done by the professional reciters. But neither the king nor the great speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam jumped up like the organizers of Bhagavatam. Both of them proceeded systematically so that both future readers and hearers might take lessons from the example of the procedure of reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are under the control of the external energy of the Lord, or in other words, those who are in the material world, must first of all know how the external energy of the Lord is working under the direction of the Supreme Personality, and afterwards one may try to enter into the activities of his internal energy.
This is an extremely important point in studying the Bhagavatam and understanding the absolute truth. We have to know the greatness of God before we think that we're going to dance with him in the forest. We have to understand this personality. So and Prabhupada time and time again stresses this point. That's what this second canto is all about, understanding the greatness of the personality of Godhead.
I had an interesting realization recently about this particular matter of systematically going through the curriculum as presented by liberated souls. I read an article about one of the devotees interested in cow protection and cow development in cows. And he was pointing out that in the 1970s, when Srila Prabhupada came to America, he saw the milk bags on the cows here are huge, whereas the ones in India are rather small. They don't have big milk bags. So his idea, he suggested to the devotees that they research mixed breeding so that some of the good qualities from the cows in America giving so much milk could be combined with the cows in India so that those cows could adapt and make bigger milk bags and more milk production. Then this devotee was pointing out that due to constant changing in management and inability to stay steady with the generation to generation development of cows in India, ISKCON has not been able to be successful in this particular development. So I was thinking about how the process of generation to generation builds a structure of strength in the cow's body over time, and an adaptability in the evolution of a species, how they adapt over time. And similarly, if we hear systematically and attentively, regularly, then that inner structure of our soul, of our self, will become manifest when we actually leave this body. We read previously about the yogis who have material attachments, and the materially molded mind and senses brings one back into a body. So the depths of our ability and strength developed by this curriculum presented by Sukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada is actually what we're taking part in. That was my little appreciation.
Thank you. I'm sorry we skipped over Narayan. So, and then we'll, Narayan, can you read? Are you with us? And then Ian?
Can I ask a question, Mataji?
Yes, please.
So, is it always recommended that when you start reading Bhagavatam, it has to go from Canto 1?
It is recommended systematic study. Systematically, there is a reason why the first canto is number 1, second canto is number 2, and third canto is number 3. Of course, in one way, it's like a bag of sugar. Wherever you poke a hole, it's sweet. But if we actually want to hear from the self-realized soul, we have to hear the Bhagavatam in a systematic process. This is what it means to be a disciple. There is a process of becoming Krishna conscious. What do you think, Pati? Anyone else
Yes,
have something
definitely.
to add to that? Yeah. Is that okay, Narayan?
Yes.
Okay. Please read now.
Okay. Kindly describe how the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, engages his different energies and different expansions in maintaining and again winding up the phenomenal world in the sporting spirit of a player. Purport. All living entities, both in the conditioned state and in the liberated state, are maintained by the Almighty Supreme Lord. Such maintenance is effected by the Lord through his different expansions of self and 3 principal energies, namely the internal, external, and marginal energies. The living entities are his marginal energies, and some of them, in the confidence of the Lord, are entrusted with the work of creation, also as Brahma, Marsi, etc. And the effects of creation are inspired by the Lord unto them. The external energy, Maya, is also impregnated by the jivas, or conditioned souls. The unconditioned marginal potency acts in the spiritual kingdom, and the Lord, by his different planetary expansions, maintains them in different transcendental relations displayed in the spiritual sky.
You see, we can see that these things are very important to hear one at a time, because then we will understand the next sections of the Bhagavatam. This is not a storybook, although there are many wonderful pastimes. This is a science. Prabhupada always related, this is a science, this Bhagavatam, this Krishna consciousness. Ian, are you ready to read?
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please. Patty, you can take this question.
The meaning of that in the sporting spirit of a player. In the sporting spirit of a player.
Okay. I don't even see. Can you put that verse up again so we can see the verse, Patty? It's the free.
Oh, the one before.
Yeah, here it is. His different energies and different explanations. Okay, I have my. Does anyone know? Patty, can you answer that? Or Madhurya, or anyone?
Go ahead. I'll hear everyone's.
Does anyone have an answer to that? This is nothing for Krishna to make the material world. This is, it's kind of like a plaything for him. It's not that he concentrated, how are we going to do this? Made all the technological understanding. Krishna he's joyful. It's automatic. It's automatic. So that's what I see it as being. As
Bhadra raised his hand also.
Bhadraji. Okay. Unmute.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, Lord, Krishna is just playing in Vrindavan. He doesn't even create. He just gives to Brahma, he gives to Balaram in expansions to create everything. He just plays in Vrindavan with the cowherd boys and with the gopis and all that he does. And for him, he just desire, and all the Balaram and all that, they all do everything. As far as I have read.
Okay.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay. Okay, Ekadasi.
Okay. Okay, so who's next? Ian and then Madhurya Leela. Are you there, Ian? I can't hear you. Where are you? Well, I don't know if he's there.
He is not here. He is not here in the meeting. So
Okay, Midoriya, can you continue reading?
O learned Brahmana, the transcendental activities of the Lord are all wonderful, and they appear inconceivable because even great endeavors by many learned scholars have still proved insufficient for understanding them. The Supreme Personality Godhead is one, whether he alone acts with the modes of material nature, or simultaneously expands in many forms, or expands consecutively to direct the modes of nature. Purport's purport. With a limited source of knowledge and with imperfect senses, any living being up to the standard of Brahmaji, the highest perfect living being within the universe, can never imagine knowing about the unlimited. We can know something of the unlimited when it is explained by the unlimited, as has been done by the Lord himself in the unique statements of Bhagavad Gita. And it can also be known to some extent from realized souls like Shukadeva Goswami, who learned it from Vyasadeva, a disciple of Narada. And thus the perfect knowledge can descend by the chain of disciplic succession only, and not by any form of experimental knowledge, old or modern.
Thank you. Isap, do you want to go? And then Dundakesh.
Okay. Kindly clear up, excuse me, this is Srimad Bhagavatam 2:4-10. Kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you are not only vastly learned in the Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence, but are also a great devotee of the Lord, and are therefore as good as the personality of Godhead. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita, they said that the supreme absolute truth, Govinda, the personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is infallibly expanded by innumerable forms, non-different from one another. And although he is the original person, he is still ever young with permanent youthful energy. He is very difficult to know simply by learning the transcendental science of the Vedas, but he is very easily realized by his pure devotees. One cannot have any clear conception of the Lord or his holy name, form, attributes, pastimes, etc., unless one is engaged in his transcendental loving service. The statement of Bhagavad Gita that one must first of all surrender unto the Lord, being freed from all other engagements, means that one must become a pure, unconditional devotee of the Lord. Only then can one know him by the strength of devotional service. The conclusion is, therefore, that a serious devotee must first approach a spiritual master who not only is well versed in the Vedic literatures, but is also a great devotee with factual realization of the Lord and his different energies. Without the help of such a devotee, spiritual master, one cannot make progress in the transcendental science of the Lord. And a bona fide spiritual master like Shukadeva Goswami does not speak about the Lord only in the matter of his internal potencies, but also explains how he associates with his external potencies.
Another confirmation by Srila Prabhupada how important it is to hear about the creation. So Dundakesh, can you read, and then Tisha? Dandakesh, are you here?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavatam 2:4-11. Sutta Goswami said, when Shukadeva Goswami was thus requested by the king to describe the creative energy of the personality of Godhead. He then systematically remembered the master of the senses, Sri Krishna, and to reply properly, he spoke thus. Purport. The devotees of the Lord, while delivering speeches and describing the transcendental attributes of the Lord, do not think that they can do anything independently. They think that they can speak only what they are induced to speak by the Supreme Lord, the Master of the senses. The senses of the individual being are not his own. The devotee knows that such senses belong to the Supreme Lord and that they can be properly used when they are employed for the service of the Lord.
It's beautiful.
Sama,
Yeah.
because we're going to go way, way over, I want to stop here because it's a particular theme. Sutta Goswami has just said that after hearing these questions by Maharaj Pariksit, now Sukadev will remember the Lord and prepare his answers. So I want to stop here today. One of the features of our particular method of study is to present it in such a way that it's digestible each week. I tried to do it. We've been doing this a long time. That's why we post so many lessons twice weekly rather than all at once, because nobody can digest that much at once. I think now we've covered a good amount of information. Sukadev Goswami, we'll see if we pick up from there. Tisha, we'll start with you next week. But until then, I think that we'll stop now and then continue next week.
Does anyone have any questions that or something? Can we have some questions? Yeah, Karna? Unmute, unmute, unmute. Karna, unmute, darling.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay.
Okay, good.
This is just a little bit cloudy in my mind. Not this last verse, the verse before, where he says, because you know the personality of Godhead, therefore I know God through you. What's the words for that? There was the last sentence of not this last text, the text before. Therefore, as good as the personality of Godhead, but also a great devotee of the Lord. Okay, so I have a question regarding that. Like just to apply the material thing. Okay, so I lost my mother when I was a young girl. So my whole life, I've met people that would say to me, oh, I knew your mother, we were good friends and this and that, but it still never connected me with my mother. I just thought there was a little, snippet of knowledge. So if we apply that to spiritual life, because you know a devotee, does that mean that, you sort of, Krishna, or can you just explain it more fully to me?
The self-realized soul can deliver Krishna because he has seen the truth. That's certainly because you knew your mother. It's very rare that someone would be able to. Maybe you get some benefit from them, people expressing their appreciation of her, which is true also in spiritual knowledge, but it's a little bit different because the self-realized soul can deliver Krishna because he has seen the truth. And we spoke about the dust before, the dust of the lotus feet of the devotee, of the self-realized soul. This is how to make advancement through service, through hearing, through service and following the instructions. It is a science, and we don't just hear from any friend or anyone. We hear from a qualified person, and all the qualifications of the person that is eligible to hear for are stated in the Bhagavad Gita. How would you answer that, Pati?
I got it.
In the last, somebody else, what? Go ahead.
I wanted to say something, Karna, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Oh, that's okay.
But
I've had therapy, so I'm okay. And Prabhupada, yeah.
Therapy.
In my experience,
Prabhupada's therapy.
I lost just for a timeline, right? I lost someone I loved very dearly, my grandmother, when I was 18. So I had 18 years of association with her. And so if it doesn't happen anymore, but when I did meet someone who knew my grandmother and they would talk about her, it did bring up for me my remembrance and my and I could feel her presence a little bit and love that we shared. I lost my father, on the other hand, when I was younger, and I had less association with him. So when someone would talk about my father, there was less, my connection to him was a little bit less. And then recently, in older age, I've lost people, my mother-in-law and people I'm close to, and so I had a lot of association with them. So when someone talks to me about that person, I feel more connected to them. And so if I understand what you're saying, it didn't seem to bring up a feeling of connection with your mom. And I'm thinking that maybe if you lost her when you were really young, you didn't have a lot of association to bring up those memories. Because what I see from all of Prabhupada's devotees, the time that they spent with Prabhupada, if you're with them and they're talking about Prabhupada, you feel like you are connected to Prabhupada somehow because the association was so strong. So that's my
That's
thought.
that's
Thank you.
beautiful. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. But
I
I'd
also
like,
I have this answer with a little bit comment.
yeah, I know, Sulakshana. You're very you can say it. They're not.
I said that because Krishna is absolute. I mean, it's not like our natural mother or something. This.
Yeah.
So when the self-realized soul has understanding of Krishna, then you can impart that up to us. But I'm not otherwise. That's what I thought.
Right, and our relationship, that's very good. Our relationship with Krishna is eternal.
Yeah.
I mean, I've lost my brother, I lost my parents. Death is there in this world, but we are here to learn how we don't have to go through this trauma of death and see those who we love die. And by reawakening our eternal relationship with our eternal divine lover, who we're actually supposed to have a relationship with. So and the method is to hear from those who know him. You're right. But this is really the thing that will satisfy the soul beyond the body, the soul, by hearing about Krishna, because he's there and we're missing him somehow or another. He's in our hearts and we're not seeing him. We're not relating to him. So, and until we do, sometimes we'll be happy, sometimes we won't be happy. So we have to hear from that person who really knows. Just like there's another thing that you said, Tisha, that those who associated with Srila Prabhupada in the beginning, they were greatly benedicted. And their stories, and when we hear them speak, it's very wonderful. But there were also many disciples who didn't get so much direct association with Srila Prabhupada, and their association with him was through service and following his instructions. I was a Sankirtan devotee, and while people were having darshan with Srila Prabhupada, I was out distributing his books. Sometimes I say, what am I not there for? But this was how service to the guru, that is your most important relationship ever, is our service to Srila Prabhupada, is our relationship with Srila Prabhupada, because he has Krishna. He is going to teach us how to have Krishna. And we're all the same. We've all lost our natural constitutional position. We're all lamenting because we're all bereft of our eternal lover, whether it's our Lord or our son, or whatever relationship we have with Krishna. And when we hear from the pure devotee spiritual master, that becomes awakened, and that is the only thing that will make us happy, really.
Regarding that science, this last week was the appearance day of Lord Nityananda. And in studying the personality of Lord Nityananda, who is the first expansion from Lord Krishna, one of the main features of Lord Nityananda is called Adi Guru. Balaram is Guru Tattva. It's actually an energy of the Lord, Guru Tattva. It's an energy of the Lord that is meant to excite, awaken, and impart knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to the disciple. So when Karna asked the question, she's asking, Sukadev Goswami is as good as the Lord. I just read recently, it's coming up in the future. No one can understand the unlimited unless, Madhurya Leela just read it, unless he's explained by the unlimited. But that representative of the Lord, the Guru, is imbued with Shakti. It's called Shakti Avesha avatar. That personality is directly connected to the spiritual energy of the Lord in the spiritual sky. And if we hear from that person, then the process of hearing awakens that dormant love within the jiva. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabo Noi Shravanada Sudha Chite Karaya Udoy. Love for Krishna is eternally dormant in every jiva. Mamaivam sa jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. All living entities, all jivas are parts of Krishna. So just like the seed has the potential to grow into a tree, each living entity has natural love for Krishna. Shravanat it doesn't come from somewhere else. Sadyakabo noi. It doesn't come from another place. It's not imparted to someone like I give you something and you receive it. It's actually the spiritual master gives instructions pertinent to that individual soul, and those instructions awaken the love within the heart of the living entity. Shravanada Sudha Chitte. Sudha Chitte means, Chitta means consciousness, Sudha means pure, and Shravanadi means hearing. Hearing from that pure conscious position, Shravanada Sudha Chitte, Korea Udoy. Udoy means it awakens, just like the sun comes up and awakens and reveals everything. So this process of hearing from a spiritual master awakens the dormant love of the soul. And that's why the spiritual master is considered a representative of the Lord. Acharya mam vigdyaniyam, navamanyeta parichit. Lord Krishna says, see the Acharya as myself. So that's why we're trying to stress hearing from Srila Prabhupada. He's obviously, look at what's happened to the world today. All around the entire planet, people are chanting Hare Krishna. It's ultimately coming due to Srila Prabhupada's books and his instructions, and then being passed on and carried on, of course. But hearing directly from him will awaken that love.
Anyone else have any questions or realizations they'd like to share? Atisha? No? Hati?
Jack. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Hare Krishna.
Panchakalpatubhischa,
Patubhischa,
Kripasindubevacha,
Kripasindubevacha,
Patitanam
Patitanam
Bhavanyo,
Bhavanyo,
Vaishnavavyo. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Prabhupada.
All glories to the Vaishnavas.
Haribo.
Haribo.